schedules and traveled great distances to join us today. In 2011, the United States hosted its last APEC, in an event that foreshadowed the challenges of today. We cannot wait another 12 years to act. The time is in fact now, and together we can achieve sustainable, equitable, and resilient agri-food systems, which is the premise of our agricultural theme for this host year. To achieve this endeavor, it's important to recognize that food and nutrition security requires food be simultaneously available, accessible, and stable, as well as affordable. Constrictions within any of these components can result in food and nutrition insecurity. But the APEC community shares a commitment to addressing global food needs now, so that we can in fact build the resilient systems that can absorb future shocks like pandemics, conflict, severe weather, and a changing climate. How we do so is challenging, but together we all believe it's possible. We must work to collaborate with other nations, like we're doing here at this ministerial, to share best practices and information as we all learn more about how to mitigate and adapt to a changing climate. Increasing agricultural productivity is also essential to meeting the needs of a growing global population. In order to produce more while minimizing environmental impacts, we must leverage innovation and foster new ways of doing things. Only by leveraging innovation in science, including biotechnology, can we provide our farmers, fishers, foresters, and other producers with the tools they need to improve productivity, sustainability, and resiliency. APEC economies should increase research in the climate-resilient agricultural innovation space that can contribute to building sustainable and resilient agricultural sectors. These advances must be made accessible to producers of all sizes and types in all parts of the world. Open markets and science-driven regulatory regimes are also critical to innovative new technologies being available. Climate change adaptation and mitigation and sustainable agricultural productivity growth are also linked to food and nutrition security, further underscoring the critical role that innovation plays and will continue to play in the future to address these many challenges. Accelerating agricultural productivity growth to reduce agriculture's environmental footprint and reducing greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture is also imperative. Without productivity growth, meeting the world's current and future food needs require use of natural resources, including the expansion of agriculture into forests and other critical ecosystems, which we can't afford to do, because such an expansion would threaten our ability to meet greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, even if other human activities were dramatically curtailed. The consequences of failing to accelerate agricultural productivity growth could be dire. Research points to higher food prices, an increase in food and nutrition insecurity and hunger, an increase in poverty, an increase in natural resource use, and an increase in greenhouse gas emissions, just to name a few. Changes to our agriculture and food systems can only happen at the needed scale and speed if farmers and other rural stakeholders reap the benefits of sustainable climate-smart policies and practices as they strive to maximize their productivity and profitability. To this end, as we learned at lunch, USDA is investing more than $3 billion to support 141 projects that will deliver significant impacts for producers and communities of all types and sizes in all 50 U.S. states. These projects will expand markets for climate-smart commodities, leverage greenhouse gas benefits of climate-smart commodity production, and provide direct, meaningful benefits to production agriculture, including our small and underserved producer operations. For example, USDA is supporting projects that will build climate-smart rice markets and work to reduce methane emissions in rice production through the adoption of alternative and alternating wetting and drying furrow irrigation and other climate-smart practices. And another project is designed to provide technical assistance and make direct payments to small-scale dairy farmers to implement climate-smart grazing management. We have projected focusing on building markets and providing funding to farmers through outcome-based contracts for the reduction and removal of carbon dioxide through the adoption of new climate-smart practices among major commodities such as corn, soybeans, and wheat. In total, we anticipate that these projects will expand hundreds of market streams for producers, reach more than 60,000 farms encompassing more than 25 million acres of working lands, and sequester more than 60 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. We recognize that many lessons learned through these domestic opportunities may be applicable on a global scale, which is why the United States is committed to sharing information, best practices, and resources within the international community, and doing so by standing up our International Climate Hub. So look forward to continued commitment and effort. Look forward to learning more during this ministerial, and looking forward to cooperating and collaborating with all of the economies represented here today as we move to address the challenge of feeding a hungry world and doing so in a changing climate. With that, I'd now like to present the meeting agenda on the screen so that all in attendance can see what is being proposed. Well, at least that was the goal. Sometimes it takes a little effort to get to the goal. Okay. I'm told that you all have a copy of the agenda by your side at your seat, so perhaps it's not necessary for us to get it on the screen. But with that, I certainly would open up the floor to any questions or concerns related to the proposed meeting agenda. Seeing no one seeking the floor, I think I can determine that the meeting agenda is adopted. With that, I'd like to now call on the Executive Director of the APEC Secretariat, Dr. Santamaria, who will provide opening comments on behalf of APEC. Madam Director, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Secretary Vilsack, Food Security Ministerial Meeting Chair, Ministers, the 2023 PPFS Chair, Alison Thomas, my friend Joseph from ABAC, Ambassador Cousins, Ambassador Matt Murray, the U.S. Senior Official, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me begin by congratulating Secretary Vilsack and the U.S. team for the hospitality and arrangements made for this ministerial. It's good to have us here meet in person, the first time since the pandemic. I must also commend the team for setting the tone for this meeting with the crucial conversations that we had this morning. We meet at a challenging time of multi-crisis. We are confronted daily with news of supply chain disruptions due to climate-induced weather events, as well as protracted geopolitical crisis. In the face of these challenges, APEC is well placed to improve regional and global food security for at least 3 reasons. 1, its members account for half of the world grain production and are among major exporters and importers of agricultural products. 2, APEC's work on trade and investment facilitation is significant, as trade and investment play a key role in food security. And 3, APEC has a platform, which in this context is the PPFS, the Policy Partnership for Food Security, to deepen engagement among key policymakers, private sector, members of the academia and agricultural experts. A bit of history on food security work in APEC. The APEC ministers responsible for food security met for the first time in Niigata, Japan in 2010. But the Policy Partnership for Food Security was the brainchild of Secretary Vilsack when US last hosted APEC in 2011. PPFS was established to ensure that the other relevant voices have a place at the table. This is significant given that the work that policymakers do impact farmers, growers, and others in the agricultural sector. We've come full circle and are privileged to have Secretary Vilsack host this ministerial meeting this year. Today, APEC's efforts on ensuring food security in the region is guided by the Food Security Roadmap towards 2030. While roadmaps are important and guides, as guides, they are only meaningful when implemented and monitored. In this, we must commend the PPFS for following through and tracking the implementation of the roadmap, as well as strengthening coordination and working with all relevant APEC sub-fora and the private sector and other key stakeholders in ensuring that we meet our goals, our food security goals. The APEC Policy Support Unit also has contributed much to the work of this body. For example, in May 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, our PSU team put out a report entitled Export Restrictions in Food Security in the Context of the COVID-19 Pandemic. The policy recommendations made then remain relevant post-COVID, especially as we figure out the nexus of climate change, food security, and an open trading system. The recommendations include intensifying cooperation efforts in areas such as working towards a collective commitment to avoid unnecessary export bans and restrictions on food products, lowering import tariffs and other quantitative import restrictions on food products, as well as working to maintain connectivity and avoid supply chain disruptions. Strengthening international cooperation and transparency to share information in a timely manner, and exchanging best practices on efforts to keep the food value chain moving during crisis. Equally important is ensuring, as stated in the Food Security Roadmap towards 2030, that we take an inclusive lens in our policy making to consider women, indigenous people, smallholders, and others who are made vulnerable due to the effects of natural disasters, climate change, and other crises. Chair and Ministers, on our part, the Secretariat will continue to work with PPFS to ensure cooperation and facilitate cross-fora collaboration in all our work streams. Thank you, Chair, and over to you.
Thank you, Madam Director, for your insightful comments and for your incredibly capable direction of the Secretariat. I'd now like to call on the U.S. Senior Official for APEC, Matthew Murray, to provide opening comments on behalf of the United States host of the APEC Business Advisory Council, and to provide their report to the Food Security Ministerial Meeting participants. Mr. Murray, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Chair. And on behalf of our entire U.S. APEC team, welcome to Seattle. And thank you for providing us with this opportunity to discuss the U.S. host year priorities. The United States is excited to be hosting APEC in 2023, and particularly to be back in the state of Washington, where we hosted the inaugural APEC Leaders Meeting in 1993. Our U.S. APEC 2023 theme is creating a resilient and sustainable future for all. And our 2023 host year is specifically focusing on three overarching policy priorities: interconnected, innovative, and inclusive. As we dive into our policy priorities and areas of focus for 2023, you will see that the cross-cutting concepts of building resilience, strengthening environmental sustainability, and advancing inclusive policies are woven across our priorities and our work. Our first policy priority is interconnected, building a resilient and interconnected region that advances broad-based economic prosperity. We believe that creating new connections and strengthening existing ties across the APEC region is at the heart of sustained economic recovery and will be critical for future growth and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific region. The APEC 2023 agriculture sub-theme of Together Achieving Sustainable, Equitable, and Resilient Agri-Food Systems helps focus the APEC agricultural agenda on the relationship between agri-food systems and climate change, food security, and sustainable productivity growth. And yesterday's joint meeting of the various APEC agricultural groups is a critical element in ensuring that food security, which is exacerbated by fragmented supply chain infrastructures, does not hamper strong, balanced, secure, sustainable, and inclusive growth in our region. Our second priority is innovative, enabling an innovative environment for a sustainable future. We welcome the work undertaken this year to advance the APEC food security roadmap towards 2030, particularly recognizing the nexus of agriculture and climate change. We also welcome economy's hard work on achieving the principles for achieving food security through sustainable agri-food systems in the APEC region and future work to operationalize these principles. Our experts will continue to share policies and best practices that incentivize innovation and adoption of climate-smart agriculture technologies and commodities, including biotechnology that supports climate adaptation while simultaneously addressing the need for climate change mitigation. And by focusing on innovation, science-based and risk-proportionate practices, and international trade standards, APEC economies will be able to accelerate the pace of achieving sustainable, equitable, and resilient agri-food systems that deliver safe and nutritious products for all. Our third priority is inclusive, affirming an equitable and inclusive future for all. We recognize that to achieve sustained economic growth, we must ensure that all segments of our societies are able to fully participate in and benefit from an increasingly connected and globalized economy. As we heard during the crucial conversations discussion this morning, public-private partnerships are key to ensuring that innovation, best practices, and policies translate into action. And in particular, by better equipping agri-food system contributors, we can increase their technical capacities to build sustainable and resilient agricultural systems. In addition, these partnerships will create safer, more traceable, and robust food systems and will contribute to supply chain efficiencies by addressing fragmented supply chain infrastructures. So we have shared with APEC member economies our 3 implementation agendas for our 2023 host year, which address various challenges in a cross-cutting manner. They are the Manoa Agenda, the Digital Pacific Agenda, and the Bay Area Agenda. We are glad to see that sustainable and inclusive economies, digital and resilient and inclusive growth, that all these elements were woven into this group's principles document, which will be discussed, I know, in the next session. The Manoa Agenda for Sustainable and Inclusive Economies, inspired by the Manoa community in Honolulu, Hawaii, will continue the legacy of the U.S. APEC host year in 2011, which launched work both to promote green growth and expand economic opportunities for women in the region. Also importantly, through the Manoa Agenda, the United States commits to working with other APEC economies in 2023 to build on APEC's existing commitments and work streams as identified in the Bangkok Goals on biocircular green economy, as well as consider new aspirational opportunities to further APEC's sustainability objectives. The Digital Pacific Agenda will use APEC to support the responsible design, development, and deployment of emerging digital technologies, aiming to secure digital access for consumers and businesses, work with the private sector to bring underserved individuals and small businesses into the digital economy, and help shape the rules, norms, and standards that govern the digital economy. And most recently, we introduced the Bay Area Agenda on Resilient and Inclusive Growth. This agenda aims to ensure that the work of APEC 2023 strengthens economic ties throughout the region and increases supply chain resilience while continuing to integrate the cross-cutting concept of inclusion. Importantly, for this group, food security cuts across all 3 of these agendas. Of course, as we meet here in Seattle during this third set of senior officials meetings and related meetings, we look forward now to economies meeting in San Francisco from November 11 to 17 for APEC Economic Leaders Week, which of course will ultimately conclude with the Economic Leaders meeting to be hosted by President Biden. We look forward to sharing more information about the events of APEC Economic Leaders Week after we wrap up here in Seattle. So thank you again for providing us the opportunity to give a brief overview of our host year priorities for APEC. We welcome any feedback or suggestions today or any time throughout the year. And we hope that you have an enjoyable stay in Seattle. And our U.S. team looks forward to continuing to work with each of you and your delegations. And thank you for the important contributions you're making in the area of food security. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Murray, thank you for sharing that comprehensive summary, highlighting the objectives of the U.S. host year. I'd now like to call on Mr. Joseph Fung to provide opening comments on behalf of the United States host of the APEC Business Advisory Council to provide their report on the food security ministerial meeting participants. Mr. Fung, you have the floor.
Thank you, Minister Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished ministers and fellow participants, I extend my gratitude to the United States for providing me with this platform to address you all today. It is an honor for me to serve as the PPFS Vice Chair representing ABAC, APEC's private sector covering 21 economies of APEC. Within ABAC, I hold a position as a chair of food security working group and also have been appointed by the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to represent Canada. This week, we concluded our ABAC3 meetings in Cebu, and I'm pleased to share the valuable outcomes of our discussions on food security with you all in SOM3. To summarize our findings, we have the following recommendations. Number one, we proposed adoption of the biocircular green economic model, aligning it with the Bangkok goals on BCG economy. The model will drive agricultural transformations, reduce food loss and waste, and promote regenerative agricultural practices. Number two, we advocate for the growth of future food sources, such as alternative and plant-based proteins and insect-based protein. Number three, we would like to facilitate the flow of agricultural products. We recommend reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers, simplifying customs procedures, and harmonizing regulatory standards while ensuring food safety and consumer protection. We emphasize the need to explore the development of regulatory sandboxes for agricultural technology. This sandbox will serve as a tool for regulators and innovators to conduct testing with ag tech before full market entry, promoting innovation while ensuring consumer protection through appropriate regulations. And lastly, we'd like to encourage the public and private investments in agricultural research and development, infrastructure, and human capital development, which is all essential to enhance the productivity and competitiveness. I would like now to highlight the project development of the Agricultural Technology Sandbox, a crucial initiative in our work. I'm the managing partner of Saltogen Ventures, a deep technology venture capital fund operating in the Pacific Rim. Our expertise includes domains like biotechnology, precision agriculture, and green technology. To achieve comprehensive insights, we collaborated with experts of the agricultural technology sector from ABAC's network of 21 member economies. Together, we conducted a roundtable to explore the regulatory environment and the benefits of implementing a sandbox project. The consensus reached was that regulatory sandboxes can significantly contribute to technological innovation and long-term development. Allow me to present some key details. Firstly, regulatory sandboxes provide entrepreneurs with monitored regulatory flexibility, allowing them to live test their innovations transparently, hand in hand with regulators, ensuring compliance by design. Number two, regulators gain a better insight and understanding of cutting-edge technologies, value chains, and support business models through sandbox projects, facilitating assessments and potential improvements to the regulatory environment. Lastly, customers, whether businesses or consumers, gain confidence in doing business with disruptive ag tech companies, as they are assured that their fundamental rights, health, and safety are all protected. During this roundtable, several insights emerged. Firstly, the regulatory environment suffers from a lack of clarity and consistency across different product types and categories, leading to cost and confusion. Definitional ambiguity is a particular challenge. Number two, a well-publicized sandbox could serve as a powerful communication tool for governments to educate the public about safety and new products, which can significantly impact new technology adoption. Number three, establishing a well-defined interface between a sandbox and existing regulatory processes is critical to avoid creating additional hurdles for commercialization, aligning multiple economies on a set of accepted data that would be ideal. Number four, it is important to note that a sandbox does not need to solve all regulatory hurdles a company faces. Prioritizing a small subset of low-hanging fruit can be highly beneficial. Looking ahead, we propose two types of sandboxes, a precision farming sandbox and a biotechnology sandbox. The precision farming sandbox would encompass precision farming, drone and satellite usage, and IoT-based sensor technology. The biotechnology sandbox would cover alternative protein, genetically engineered crops, soil fertility improvement, and pest resistance. Our proposed development plan for these sandboxes consists of 3 phases. In the first phase, we'd like to generate demand for sandboxes by rolling out basic features. This phase would allow entrepreneurs to test innovations under monitored regulatory flexibility and help regulators understand cutting-edge technologies and business models. In the second phase, we'd like to boost regulators' capacity and foresight, along with customers' confidence, by investing in the surrounding institutional infrastructure, maximizing the value of sandboxes for all stakeholders. And in phase 3, we'd like to assess, improve, streamline, and scale the ecosystem based on impact assessments, document processes, and stakeholder feedback. The review would determine whether the ecosystem is meeting its objectives, and if not, decide on whether to sunset or redesign it to address its shortcomings. In conclusion, I am grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this critical working group that plays an essential role in shaping APEC region's future. I want to express my heartfelt appreciation for allowing me to share ABAC's recommendations today. Together, let us work towards a future that is much more secure and innovative in food security and agricultural technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fung, very much for that comprehensive report as well. And as you heard this morning, public-private partnerships are indeed critical to the agricultural sector's ability to move towards a more sustainable, resilient agri-food system, which will enable our region to address growing food security concerns. Certainly appreciate your insight and encourage fellow agricultural ministers and heads of delegations here today to consider the information and recommendations that you have provided. It's my hope that together we can strengthen cooperation and drive PPFS to become a more meaningful venue for proactive discourse and for public-private solution building.
Are leaders with the power to make a difference on the agri-food policies, not just for the economies of the APEC region, but for the entire global community. Because achieving global food and nutrition security will require a joint and sustainable transformation, a just and sustainable transformation of our food system. A just and sustainable transformation must protect the health of our people, our environment, and ensure food system resilience by delivering an equitable financial return to all actors across the food system, from the farmers who increasingly necessary and the increasingly necessary private sector investors. Because while public policy, research, and innovation are critical to the food system is driven by private sector actors, and change will require public-private partnership and an exponential increase in private sector capital investment, as well as public capital support, particularly capital flows into places and people historically deemed too risky, but at the center of achieving the necessary food systems transformation. But let's all remember, there is no one heuristic for food systems transformation, no silver bullet. As each of you know, the agri-food system is complex and complicated, which means achieving a sustainable transformation will require a diversity of solutions, from agroforestry to regenerative agricultural production, including sustainable intensification, as well as organics, measurable, sustainable livestock management, as well as complementary proteins, including plant-based proteins, as well as cellular-produced proteins. But the diversity of solutions must go beyond production to include more sustainable processing, transport, refrigeration, warehousing, and more efficient retail system. And let's not leave out our consumers, because consumer demand for more sustainably produced food is what will drive farmers. Farmers tell me whether in Iowa or sub-Saharan Africa, they grow what will sell. So we cannot leave our consumers behind. And we also can't leave our consumers behind because food loss and waste occurs at household level as well as along the production and transport system. The world needs APEC to embrace the concept of diversity of solutions in support of each nation's economy's ability, each national economy's ability to determine the context-based pathway to achieve your sustainable, resilient food systems. Based on each of your climates, your cultures, your existing food system policies, determining what is your pathway forward for food system transformation in each of your economies. But prioritizing food system transformation alone will not result in the food system we need, because an ugly truth is we don't have access to all the tools required to fully implement this diversity of solutions as required. We maintain a critical need for more science-based solutions and innovation. Indeed, we need more drought-resistant seeds, more and better biological and digital tools to help our farmers access what is necessary to support their economic viability as well as their productivity. The U.S. and UAE Aim for Climate is an example of the innovation that support that is required. We need to support far more innovation sprints and more research. The platform and programs presented this morning by Australia offer another set of ideas about the way to bring private and public sector together on more innovation and research. Too often, these innovations and tools coming online are too expensive and in some cases unavailable to smallholders because the science and technology have not progressed to the point of offering affordable solutions for climate-smart agriculture for all. You in this room maintain the power to expedite and scale through your individual economies as well as through your collective action in the development and onboarding of new science-based solutions. Today, the difficult geopolitical challenges too often limit our ability to agree on much. Yet, with science as our common language and point of agreement, even, I dare say, our political commonality based on science, APEC might find a pathway to developing and delivering the science-based solutions necessary to support the necessary food systems transformation. The solutions are required from farm to fork. But no one economy working alone will ensure the just transformation of the food system. For our food system is a global food system, a system supported by efficient trade among economies. APEC, as a net exporting region, supports the food security of many of the world's most vulnerable people. During my service as U.S. Ambassador to the FAO, I worked with many APEC leaders in the aftermath of the 2009 high food price crisis, a crisis most will agree, which occurred because net rice importing countries in West Africa and the Caribbean could not afford commodities after net exporting countries implemented export restrictions in response to their own domestic food security challenges. But things changed. And during the COVID epidemic, the global community, including the APEC region, recognized and embraced the WTO obligations regarding export restrictions to ensure a free, fair, and open global trading system. Yes, WTO agreements are flexible in allowing the use of emergency trade restrictions related to national security or health that might otherwise contravene WTO obligations. But the agreements require such restrictions should be targeted, always temporary, and definitely transparent. Countries abided by and supported their WTO obligations during COVID, And as a result, we had no famines, and babies around the world had access to the food they needed. As stated on the WTO's website, global rules of trade provide assurance and stability. Consumers and producers know they can enjoy secure supplies and greater choice of the finished products, component, raw materials, and services they use. Producers and exporters know foreign markets will remain open to them. This free and fair and open trade leads to a more generous, peaceful, and acceptable and accountable economic world. This is the world which we need to provide food and nutrition security for all. And APEC, this region, has the opportunity to lead. Let me close by again thanking you for this opportunity and applauding APEC for embracing your role in this region and globally for transforming our food system for the people and for our planet. What often seems impossible becomes possible with political will, like-mindedness, and a commitment to overcoming the seemingly intractable challenges. As a hunger warrior, I can honestly tell you the future of the world's healthy babies depend on you and our successful transformation of the food system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador, for those thoughtful and thought-provoking and challenging remarks. I'd now like to call a short recess before we enter the closed ministerial session. We had planned on a 20-minute break, but I think we'll limit it to 15 minutes, so please reconvene at 2:30, 15-minute break. Thank you.